I think we're live now. Woohoo!
Cool.
All right. Thanks for joining us once again. I'm Sammy K. Powers, and this is the PHP Roundtable Happy Birthday Edition. Woo! 2 years. This is a live podcast of developers discussing topics that PHP nerds care about, and the ultimate goal of this podcast is to learn a little something from one another. So if you're listening live and want to be a part of this little shindig, send a tweet to PHP Roundtable with a question or comment. We'll get your comment/question/snooty trolling that Gary Hawken is already doing on Twitter addressed on the show. And I don't have my normal monitoring program up right now, so I've got my phone on. So hopefully we'll be able to monitor that on my phone. Probably not as well. I should have set this up before going live, but here I am trying to fix my phone live on air, switching it to the PHP Roundtable account. Here we go. There we go. Monitoring the notifications officially. All right. So today, the PHP Roundtable podcast celebrates 2 years of generating nerdy discussions on Google Hangouts on Air and pushing them into your ear holes while you drive down the highway. So the PHP Roundtable came to life on August 25th, 2014, and we talked about the PHP community, and we've talked about the PHP from the command line and elephants. That was the very first episode, and we actually have 2 guests, recurring guests, that came back for the 2-year anniversary who were on that first episode, and then some others who were on some of the early episodes too, and recurring guests. But since then, we've talked about everything from microservices to databases to contracting to PHP internals to debugging to the PHP Fig and everything in between. And we're just getting started. There's still tons of topics to be discussed on the PHP Roundtable, and I'm determined to keep the discussions going well into the future. So today we're going to get a little bit of a kind of behind-the-scenes look at the PHP Roundtable and have some general nerdy chatter about what's happening in the PHP world. And so now that we know kind of what we're talking about, let's meet the panel, and as always, in no particular order, we're going to kick this off with Chris
Good job.
Chris Tankersley, Dragon Man Tank on Twitter. That's his official name every time I see him. Dragon Man Tank on Twitter. He's the PHP jack of all trades. Welcome, Dragon Man Tank on Twitter.
Thank you for having me back.
Absolutely. We also have Jeremy Mikola, who's the MongoDB driver, engineer, sausage connoisseur, and game host.
We'll take it.
Which is another way of saying game show host. Welcome, Jeremy.
Thank you.
And by the way, I did not know how to spell connoisseur, and I think I spelled it can-sour.
It's an audio podcast, so the spelling really doesn't matter. I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Good. We also have Cal Evans, who's the manager for training at Zend. Welcome, Cal.
Thank you. Good to be here.
Absolutely. And finally, Davey Shafik, who's the developer evangelist for Akamai and release manager for PHP 7.1. Welcome, Davey.
That's some latency.
Muted.
Davey's reporting live from Singapore, where he just returned from PHP
indeed.
Asia keynote speaker there.
I wasn't muted. It was just lag. Yeah.
Oh, right. It was just lag. By the way, I think it's the first time I was able to pronounce Akamai without using a pronunciation key inside of my little notes here.
I thought it was a commie.
Oh, is it?
Is it?
No, that's the
No.
game company.
Yeah.
Okay.
And you're Jeremy Mikola, right?
Yes.
So I'm having some flashbacks. A couple reasons I have having flashbacks. One, this is the original mic from the PHP Roundtable that is more reliable than apparently the Audio-Technica 2100, which is an amazing, beautiful mic, but it's been giving crackling sounds so much in the past 2 episodes that caused me so much post-time editing that until I figured that out, it's back to the snowball, the reliable snowball. Also, we have Cal Evans here, who's in the very first episode, and literally on the first episode, I had no idea who Davey Shafik was, Davey Shafik, and I launched this thing, and I actually, for the first PHP Roundtable, I actually publicly linked the Google Hangouts, and I was like, hey, anybody want to join this little discussion? Pop in. So we start off with Cal, and then all of a sudden Davey pops in last minute and was like, what's up? What's this thing? And literally today, like, I invited him on for this episode. I was like, hey, it'd be great to have you back because you're in the first episode. And then, like, 5 minutes ago, he's like, hey, it's 1 a.m. Singapore. I'm down. Let's do this. So, like a recurring, just a recurring theme. I really like it. I like the way you roll, Davey.
Yeah.
So what's been happening with you guys since since the very first episode, but Jeremy, you were in the second and third one, and Chris, you were in some early ones, and you've been in a bunch of them. So what's new with you guys in the PHP world?
I think that's kind of a
Somebody
loaded
wanna go
question.
Okay, I can start. I've run out of conference talks to give, so I'm taking a brief hiatus.
You still give talks? I thought you just did the game show.
No, I've basically just been going around doing game shows recently. But the last new talk I had was in Barcelona at the Symphony Conference, and I don't have the willpower to create more abstract, so I'm gonna just become a lowly attendee now and enjoy the hallway track. Because there's still the fear of missing out if you don't go to these things. So I'm looking forward to going to True North PHP and the next SymphonyCon in Berlin. But yeah, other than that, a lot of driver activity keeping busy, and Cal's got me penned for this something in December, which I guess he'll announce in due time.
I will.
Yeah.
Is that a top secret thing, or is it announceable?
It's the annual December day camp for developers that we always do one like right before Christmas because nobody's doing any work anyhow. Why not come hang out? But I have not yet announced the topic because I am still waiting on one person to hear back from one person.
Cool. What have you been doing? If you've been doing a lot of that stuff since episode 1 2 years ago, you're still at the conference talking and keynoting, Cal?
Still doing a lot of conference talking. I keep saying I'm going to cut back, and I actually did. This year I only did 10 events, so that's a step back for me. But I have, since then, I've produced 2 books. I did one on developer management called Culture of Respect, and I'm about to release one on speaking for developers called Spin a Good Yarn. And then just continue to work with some awesome speakers in the PHP community to do Nomad PHP.
Nice. Nomad PHP is awesome. It gets quite a few plugs on the PHP Roundtable. It's constantly referred to. I think it's just one of those great resources to refer people to.
We do appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Question from the audience.
Yes.
Is Nomad and your other side endeavors, is this something that you now get to work on during the daytime? Or is it still completely separate from Zen's training?
No, I still, my day job is actually managing training and certification for Zen. So if you have taken a Zen course recently, or you have taken the Zen certification or Zen PHP certification, exam, that's my team, and that's my day job. I still do all this on the night during the evenings. Now, Kathy gets to work on it during the day, but she does everything from produce the podcast to do all the video editing to edit my books, and God knows that's horrible. Joe Ferguson's wife, Kara, is actually the editor for my book. If anybody's looking for a great editor, she is phenomenal. But she's working on my books has actually driven her to start drinking hard liquor. I mean, she used to do just wine every now and then. Now Joe says she's throwing back bottles after she reads my stuff. So it's just that bad.
Nice. Davey, I don't think you were working for Akamai 2 years ago, so that's new, right?
Yeah. I've been at Akamai for just over a year. So yeah, I've been doing a lot of travel. I'm cutting down also. I think I probably made 50% last year travel. This year I think I'm down to 48 or something. But yeah, so just a lot of travel. I got to do my second keynote here in Asia, which was fun. I've been doing a lot of Python events as well in Polyglot, so kind of branching out of just PHP. So yeah.
Oh yeah, and I got too close to Davey, so he actually moved across the frickin' country. I moved from Florida, and he said, "Nope, screw it, I'm out of here." So
literally
not
as
just
far
across,
as I could go,
diagonally across.
Yeah.
Just Seattle.
Yep. I'm now 3 hours from Canada. I can get my all-dressed chips like at my regular supermarket. So thank you, Jeremy, for turning me on to those at True North last year.
Will you be going to Pacific Northwest just by default since you live there?
Actually, I have to fly back from another conference a day late to attend. But yes, I will be there. I'll be speaking.
It's a good thing you cut back to 48% travel, though.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I'll be there for the 2 days of the actual conference. So.
Yeah. So Pacific Northwest is anybody else going besides you and Davey?
I will be there speaking.
Yay.
I may show up on Sunday.
Do it. I'll be there speaking as well. It'll be my first speaking gig at an official conference. So
awesome.
Hopefully everybody will show up and we'll party. So if you're listening and you want to check out a cool conference, definitely check out the Pacific Northwest PHP conference. which is, when is it? It's September 15th through the 17th.
Through the 17th, yep.
In Seattle, where it's located. The official. Oh, and ZenCon. Anybody going to ZenCon in Las Vegas? October 18th
I will
and
be
21st.
there as well.
You will?
Yep.
Sweet. Me too. We should all hang.
Let's do that.
I bet we could find a bar or a place to hang out while we're there.
In Las Vegas?
Yeah, I don't think they
know.
have
I mean,
any.
Might want to reserve in advance.
Well, thanks guys for joining for this happy birthday episode. I really, I was kind of just making this a little informal, maybe give a little bit behind the scenes of what happens at the PHP Roundtable, and then just kind of talk a little bit, just whatever nerdy PHP topic we can come up with. Because I do have a couple people who ask me, like, how did you decide to start the PHP Roundtable? Well, let me tell you. So the idea started in PHP Tech 2014, and it was one of my first PHP conferences, and I just remember sitting around this table of people and just having these great discussions. I was like, man, this would be great. I'm learning so much too. If I could just like share this with the rest of the world, like people who are in my same spot learning, if I could just share all this knowledge and we could just record this conversation and launch it. And I was like, maybe we should do like a podcast. And speaking of PHP Tech, PHP Architect is the sort of the magazine that also comes around this whole PHP Tech, PHP Architect brand. But I wanted to give a shout out to PHP Architect because they are offering a special discount for PHP Roundtable people. It is the monthly journal for PHP programmers. So if you've never heard of it, check it out. So this is the blurb. They sent me a little blurb that I can use here. It said, "Stay ahead of the curve. Discover new tools and see what's going on in the PHP community. Subscribe today at phparc.com. So here's the cool thing. You can get 25% off the description at phpa.me/phproundtable, and that'll get you set up to check out the magazine. It's really awesome. So thanks, PHP Architect, for that awesome discount. So anyway, I was nerding out on this lean startup methodology back in the day before I started this podcast. And the podcast, I said, would be validated if of the 10 people that I invite, if 5 of them, like experts at the round table, like if 5 of the people agreed, then the idea is validated. And if only 3 or less agree, then I will say it's a failed idea. So I sent out 10 invites and got 7 replies, and they were all like, "Yay, let's do this!" And Cal Evans, you were, I think, probably the very first person I sent the invite to, and you responded back really fast, and you were like, "Yeah, let's do this." And I was like, "Well, that was easy." So what was what was that?
Don't confuse enthusiasm for boredom. You know,
Can I just point out this all sounds like a PHP fake working group?
Oh, you just had to go there.
All right.
But so Cal, I'm curious when I sent that initial email, because I don't think we'd ever met in person. I mean, I saw you at Laracon speaking, but I don't think we ever officially met. So what was your process of, like, how do you deal with like this random email from somebody who you've never heard of? They're like, I think I want to do a PHP podcast, and you're just down, you're ready to go.
I have a very strict policy. If anybody ever invites me on a podcast, I immediately reply with yes, quickly before they can change their mind. And this policy has served me well in most cases. And no, it's always fun. When you said we're going to do podcast and PHP, I've been doing PHP podcasts since 2006, I believe. I used to have one called PHP Abstract that I recorded for Zend, and I enjoy podcasting. So when you said you're starting up a new one, I'm like, I'm in. You know, originally I was like, well, what can I do to help promote it? And then I saw, oh, you want me to be on it? Well, okay, there's a bad decision for you, but sure, why not? You know. So yeah, I always, when people want to sit down and talk PHP on podcasts, I'm always game.
I think you have the longest running PHP podcast that's still going, right? The PHP Elephant, is that the longest running one?
Voices of the Elephant, and it has been running since 2011, I believe. So 5-6 years. So.
Yes, Voices of the Elephant. Sorry, I'm thinking of the Twitter account handle, which is Elephant. Yes.
Funny story. That I had that Twitter account long before I started the podcast. I had set it up. I needed a back in the day before Twitter had OAuth and all that. Twitter was kind of the de facto if you're learning how to work with APIs, because they just had basic HTTP auth, and so it was really easy. And I needed a Twitter account that I could not only tweet random stuff out to and nobody would care. But when I was teaching, because I was doing some teaching for the BBC and a couple other places, I needed an account that I could hand out the username and password and just really didn't care about. So I said, oh, fine, let's set this up. And after I stopped teaching, it just kind of sat by the wayside, and I started this podcast up. I was like, geez, I really need a Twitter handle for this. Oh, wait, I've got the perfect one. So it just kind of happened that I had that one.
Did you happen to change the password after you'd given it out to everybody?
As far as you know, yes.
There might be some random tweets that show up in your timeline later, right?
Possibly. Any of my old students still remember that? Feel free to try.
Yeah, I'll have to maybe hit you up later about kind of what to do with when you have a mic that goes awry, so we can talk like maybe upgrading chipset software, or I don't even know what to do about these things. I'm sure you've seen it all when it comes to everything that goes wrong in podcasting.
Oh yeah, live, and I mean, well, I just had recently one of my mics. I've got a lavalier mic I use for recording videos and stuff like that when I'm doing talking heads. And I sat down, I plugged it in, and nothing. And 2 hours later, it's still not working. And so I figured at that point I've wasted 2 hours on it. It's a $20 mic. I threw it away. I ordered another one from Amazon. That's kind of how I fix the cheap gear,
Throw it away and buy a new one. Nice. So I have to give you a great. So Cal is, if you don't know Cal, he's a great driver of community, and he connects people, and he does a great job of doing great things for the community. And your advice to me actually right before the first episode is you told me to listen to the Beancast Marketing Podcast. And I listened to it, and I loved the format of it because it's more of like a roundtable type podcast, but it's for marketing, not for PHP. But I was like, this is great. So I actually use that format. If you listen to the Beancast Marketing Podcast, you'll notice that it actually starts and ends very similar to PHP Roundtable with the shameless plugs at the end and all this stuff. The Beancast also has a segment called the Ad Fail 5. Which is basically they look through. It's like a weekly podcast, so they go through the whole week and then find like 5 ads that were kind of failures, and they talk about them and things like that. And I was like, it'd be cool if we had a segment on the PHP Roundtable. So I don't know if you guys remember this. I know I think all of you except for Chris maybe were in an episode where I had this, but there was a segment called Something Old, Something New, Something Borrowed, and Something Deprecated. And that was like I was going to do that at the end of every episode and be like, hey, what's something new in PHP? What's something old in PHP? What's something deprecated in PHP? And like I don't remember, like I remember kind of asking people, and it was cool to like talk about random things in PHP, but it also was kind of like, well, I mean, after like 4 episodes, you kind of talked about enough new stuff in PHP. There's nothing really new to talk about or something, So that's I was like, it's something needs to change. So that's when I got the idea for doing the developer shout out, which we're going to do later, but. I started with sending $25 gift cards to developers who were doing awesome stuff in the community. I was like, it'd be cool to just recognize really cool people. And then I started like realizing that for $25 an episode, this is going to get expensive, so I brought it down to $15. And then luckily I had Jeffrey Way on for one of the earlier episodes, and I think it was episode 14 or something. He was in the testing episode, and at the end he was like, hey, you know what, if you want to sponsor for this developer shoutout thing, like Layercast would be happy to sponsor. So ever since then, Layercast has been like a long-running sponsor of the developer shoutout, and we've been able to give out $50 Amazon gift cards for the developers for every episode. So thanks Layercast and Jeffrey for your ongoing sponsorship. That's really awesome. We'll give you another shoutout in a little bit. In fact, I totally forgot to ask the panel in this episode who we should do for the developer shoutout. So I got an idea. As we're going, if you guys can kind of think of one behind the scenes, maybe in chat or something, and at the end we'll announce the developer, and then make sure you check out at phproundtable.com/ I think it's developer-shoutout or something. There's a list of all the people who's had it in the past. So don't do a double nomination, but you're welcome to nominate anybody you like. That's your homework for right now. Sorry about that.
Is there a private chat?
There is. It is right here. Hopefully you can see that.
Oh, there we go.
Yeah. So Jeremy, I think you were on the second episode, and we tried to tackle this
the async.
this really crazy. Yeah, there's the functional programming one.
That was with the Perl guy, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, that was with.
He went out for lunch and we got him in his car. The reception was bad, and then he showed up in a hotel room.
Yes, yes, that's Glenn Hinkle.
Yes.
He's a buddy from the West Coast Swing World. He's a great, incredible programmer. He spent most of his time in Perl, but now he's doing iOS stuff now these days. But yeah, so what was your thoughts on that episode? I'm curious. Like, I don't know if you remember much about it, but
if I recall, I was only on there because of React stuff, which I really haven't touched in well over a year. That was a curious one. I don't remember that episode going too well.
Yeah, I also just kind of like after like halfway through, I'm like, I don't really know where this thing is going.
It was incredibly ambitious, and I don't know if any of us are really qualified to. I don't know how it was received. But...
Yeah.
Did you all get out of sync?
That's punny. Although I think I did. We tried to have like another episode later on that kind of tackled. I think we had. Oh, is it immutability? I think it was. Yeah, immutable PHP in episode 35. That sort of touched on some of the functional concepts in a slightly more guided way. So hopefully, for those who are confused by episode 2, check out episode 35.
And did that bleed into to functional programming? Just with immutability?
I think so. Yeah, I think we talked on some immutable concepts within context of functional programming. Okay. Although I still haven't dabbled in any functional programming languages yet. It still behooves me.
Wait, have you revisited topics?
Yes.
Like a once a year, like come back and maybe change the people that are on for the same topic.
Yeah. The some of the more popular ones have to do with business, the business of PHP. And so there's a 2 or 3 about contracting and things like that. And there's another one coming up, hourly versus value-based pricing, which is kind of a hot topic with some. But then there's what was the other one? There's a couple of others. PHP internals comes up a lot, but that's sort of like a too much of a broad topic. Mm-hmm. And then the one that's like a series where we're going through and making a project that's been taking like over a year to make, but from idea to production. So we've got 2 of those. There's going to be another one actually scheduled not too far away from now because I've actually been working on it some more. That's kind of just taking this kind of general idea and then turning it into an actual project. And I've actually got a code base of what happened when it failed the first time. It's out there. You can see my failure at PHP Round. What is it? At GitHub.com/PHP Roundtable. You can see the failure for all to see. But that's okay. We can fan our failures around.
Suffice to say, few of the episodes have been like as topicless as say like the WorstCon episode where we're just in your apartment fooling around.
And that was the very third one too. Like
that was the third one, yeah.
It wasn't really getting off to a good start.
It was fine once Phil showed up, which is the sad part of all that.
Words that have never been uttered before or since.
Yes.
Drunk Phil showed up, got us on track. We had a fine podcast after that, and then he left, and it all went to crap again.
But I do remember, and I've told you this before, Sammy, like the effort you show going into an episode with like show notes from like the very first like the async episode. You sent out an email early on, and it had like these are the topics we're going to talk about, and these are some questions I might bring up. Was a lot of good prep work. So I think like for the actual topics you cover, it's and I think that is most of your episodes.
And I'm very impressed with that because I do one long form podcast every now and then called "It's the Booze Talking," and the show prep is we all sit down at the table and go, okay, what are we going to talk about? There's no, and most of y'all. There's no prep work at this, it's just we sit down. As long as you've got alcohol, you're good to go. So.
I love that about especially those podcasts because it's so organic, and I've definitely tried to not go so show note heavy and allow it to be a little bit more organic too.
No. I was using you as the good example.
That's the thing. That's the thing, though. I think there's definitely pros and cons to both ways, and something like this episode, for example, I like it when it's sort of like more organic and there's not like we don't have to follow such a rigid structure and stuff. Oh, what is this? A PHP elephant for Symfony. I really want that.
The coveted Symphony elephant.
Oh my goodness, that's one that I don't have.
More of those because like I don't have one.
Rumor has it that half the shipment got destroyed or caught in customs or something like that. So I got no idea. I got lucky. A friend of mine said, "Hey, I've got an extra. I'll send it to you." So
Gary
my
Hawkins stole mine, and he owes me a green Zen framework elephant.
Ooh, those go for like $1,300, just so you know.
Yes.
jeez.
Yeah. No, so my understanding is that so like 700 out of 1,000 got cremated by customs, and yeah, that was that. So yeah, they were destroyed, and so what we have is this very, very small limited number that were reserved for SymphonyCon, right? So
and Symphony Live London, but there was some drama there between where they actually ended up. I think the Frenchies won.
That's a first.
That's not the first time customs has screwed with elephants. When the very first shipment of blues came out, Zend ordered 2 cases of them for the office just to hand out. And one of the cases got held up in customs. And it showed up a week before I headed out for ZenCon, I want to say ZenCon 2007. Yeah, it was Burlingame. And so I show up to the office, and they go, "Hey, we've got this box here. We don't know what to do with you. What do you do with this?" And I opened it up. I looked at it. I said, "This is garbage. I'll just take care of it." And so for the entire ZenCon, I was walking around with a messenger bag with 4 or 5 elephants just stuffed in it, and I was just handing them out at random because I had a case of 50 to hand out. It was awesome.
It's like Jesus and the fish and bread.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
Liz Smith had complained to me that her daughter keeps stealing her. So this is back when they were all very young. Her daughter kept stealing the ones that she had given to her sons, and so I gave her a sleeve of 3 just for her daughter, so her daughter would have enough, so she didn't have to steal them. And she sent me a picture the next week of her daughter with those 3 and all the other ones in the house there on her bed.
There was actually a picture just out, I think, last week from Liz with the now grown-up, not grown-up, but more grown-up daughter with all of them.
Nice.
Asking for more. So yeah, that hasn't stopped.
Get them hooked while they're young.
Oh,
Yep.
yeah.
I love how the conversation of elephants has come up in the 25th anniversary. It was the first episode as well. I said 25th anniversary. Where did I get 25? Oh, today's the 25th, right?
No, today's Linux 25th.
No, it's not.
It's not?
Oh, not in Singapore, huh?
Today's the 26th. Yeah.
It's the second episode or second anniversary, but on the 25th of August. I know what date it is. Actually, Gary Hawkins on Twitter asking if I'm drunk. I am not drunk. In fact, I haven't drank in a while. Actually, I had a little bit at a dance competition recently, but no, Gary, I'm not. Thanks for trolling.
I do think we might have triggered him with the Symphony Elephant discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Sean Barrett says happy birthday, so thank you, Sean. And Joe Ferguson is tuning in and hearing his name, and he's giving the... What is the emoticon when it's 2 angle brackets facing to the right, but there's a dot in the middle?
I think it's a...
Yes, the people listening on audio can see Jeremy's face going
Apparently,
on.
Joe Ferguson just finding out his wife is an alcoholic from Cal.
Oh, that's what it was. That's right.
That's what you want to find out on the PHP Roundtable.
So, UK Blabberbox on Twitter is asking, why do most hotshot devs, Phil Sturgeon, Jeffrey Way, Taylor Otwell, use Macs for dev work?
So Phil Sturgeon actually uses a low-budget Chromebook with a Apple sticker on it, but don't tell anyone. I think it's probably it's just the hardware. It's in the Mongo office. Everything is Macs here.
Mm-hmm. I use Mac because it's closer to Linux.
Yeah.
But I can still run Photoshop. Like, it's a nice compromise, and it's just the most productive machine for me, right?
I had a complaint because this conference room, we have these we had Ethernet ports installed, and they actually glued them into the Apple adapters because there's only 2 people in the entire company, myself included, and Derek, that do not use MacBooks.
And I actually just switched off my MacBook to go to a ThinkPad so I could run Linux. So I had to pull this thing out of storage just to get on this podcast and record myself.
I mean, if you don't want it, I've got space for it. Just so you
Oh
know.
no, it's gonna go back on the shelf. It's fine. It's my spare.
Pacific Northwest PHP is giving another shout out. We gave you guys a shout out earlier, so they're wanting another shout out by giving us a shout out on Twitter. So shout out back and forth.
No, they're just looking for a shameless plug.
A shameless plug, yes, absolutely. But that's okay. That's okay though. Hey Chris, I haven't heard from you a little bit. It really impressed me in episode 15. You talked about licensing, which is a pretty boring topic, but you made it really exciting. How did you do that?
I talk good, I guess.
I believe it's talk well, sir.
No, it's fine.
Well, actually.
I think with any topic, it just helps to be passionate about that topic. So, like at PHP World and also the kickoff party for Pacific Northwest, I'm going to be talking about the history of open source. So hopefully those are just as well received. But I think being passionate about any topic, and licensing is one of those things that it sounds like a really boring topic, but there's a lot of facets to it and things you have to consider. Really helps with any topic that you want to talk about. And now I've bored the audience. Thank you.
So
We were all just so enthralled,
We were.
just waiting for the mic drop. And just...
I don't want to drop my microphone.
Can you see that?
I can.
There,
So
drop the phone.
Kyle is showing off a bunch of elephants.
Bunch of elephant. This is my what I call the elephant box. It has my golden ticket to WorstCon.
Ooh.
Yes.
Yeah.
My official PHP Women Booth Babe T-shirt. Actually, that's the unofficial one. This one's the official one. Cal has memorabilia from way back in the community. I have the playing cards. I have the trading cards. I have a lot of that kind of stuff, and I just keep it all in a box. Every time I go to a new conference and get something unique, I throw it in the box. The latest is the PHP Cruise.
Nice.
Which, if you weren't on that, you missed a drunken party. It really was.
Very nice. Do you have anything with PHP 6 written on it or anything?
I have my PHP 6 certified T-shirt, but that's actually not in that box for some reason. So I don't have anything handy.
Gotcha. We just talked about PHP 6 and what happened to it in the last episode, so that was I'm just curious if you had anything that was referencing that since.
I used to have Andy Gutman's PHP 6 book. I had one of those before they pulled it off.
Andy also published one?
Oh yeah, Andy was the one. That was the famous. Well, he was like one of 3 authors on this, but they rushed it out.
Because I know you can still buy Liz Narrow. You can still buy Liz Narrow.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this one's not available anymore. So, and this one was the first book that I ever saw that had namespaces. So, fun times.
Very, very nice. So, I want to take a quick second to take a snapshot like this of the PHP Roundtable website, which is phproundtable.net or .com. Whoa, .net. Where did that come from? I had 2 cups of coffee.
This is actually an ICANN top-level domain, if you're curious. Is that a rhetorical question? Okay.
So, because a couple of people have asked me about the website. In fact, there's a couple of people who came to me about wanting to do a podcast, and they're like, "Hey, what did you do for your website? What do you recommend?" And I was like, "Hey, I'll give you access to the code base." And it's a really awful, ugly code base written in Laravel 4.2, so pretty old school. Haven't upgraded in a while, except for yesterday I started upgrading it to 5.3. So, but basically it started off as this really ugly static website designed in Bootstrap. If you're talking with like agile sort of philosophies, you want to start off with your MVP, your minimum viable product, and you make sure that it works, and then you make it better over time. So that's exactly what I did. And I actually had several episodes out there before I even had spent any more time on the website or even having an RSS feed. You'd think, oh, it's a podcast, you have to have an RSS feed. Well, yeah, you do, but you want to see, maybe a couple episodes in, maybe to see if it's worth doing past 4 episodes. I know they say in podcasting. Go ahead.
You built it in Laravel, so you couldn't get WordPress working or something? What?
No, I didn't.
I'm kidding. I'm kidding.
You should have used. I mean, really.
What's that, Chris?
I said you should have used Sculpin. I mean, honestly, no need for framework. Just do it all in static. It's fine.
Sculpin in a Docker container.
That's
Hey, Sculpin
it works just fine.
Sculpin was the only project that I have run in my recent Docker PHP 7.1 sandbox. Sculpin's the only project that all the tests pass without any problem whatsoever. So I've tested like 20 projects. Sculpin's the only one that is just clean and green.
We'll pretend that's because it's good code quality, not because of the lack of tests.
Well, yeah, it's easy to pass if you've only got 4 tests. So.
Good call.
Are you sharing that info? Because as release manager, it'd be nice to know what's failing.
I've just been up on DevZone is the article on how to build the Docker thing. I've just been testing it out with different projects just to see. Every now and then I'll tweet it out with, "Hey, look, this." Laravel came very close. Laravel 5.3, it had like 4 skipped tests or something like that, or 4 warnings or something like that. And Zim Framework MVC came close. I tried Faker, but oh my god, so it's like the horror. It spit out like 100 different warnings. So,
yikes.
Nice.
Well, Davey, you would be happy to know that I just added PHP 7.1 Alpha 3 to my Travis CI in one of my open source projects, and all the tests are coming back happy.
Yeah, I actually I was using Nightly because it was Nightly for a while. And then I did a push, and my test failed. And I updated like the README. I'm like, what happened? And Nightly had switched to 7.2, and everything broke. So yeah, make sure you're specifying 7.1 in your Travis configs if you're doing that. And you should be doing that.
I just realized I said that, and then I went and checked, and I forgot I added PHP 7.1 Alpha 3 to my allow failures, and it is failing. But it's not because PHP, not because of anything unexpected. It's giving a warning about mcrypt being deprecated.
Is it because you're on Alpha 3, not Beta 3?
I'm on Alpha 3. Yeah. Is that changing in beta?
We're Beta 3. No, it's not changing, but like you're 3 versions behind.
Oh, you're right. No, I'm sorry. It is Beta 3. I don't know where I got Alpha 3. Beta 3. But mcrypt is still deprecated in 7.1 anyway, right?
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And that's not going to change. Mcrypt itself is just not maintained, and it should be burned with fire.
Absolutely.
If we didn't care about our users, we wouldn't even deprecate it. We would just get rid of it. But we do, so we're not going to.
That's definitely one of those BC breaks that I'm very happy about because it's a security issue. Since that's a security library that hasn't been maintained, it's kind of important to deprecate that. Probably should have been deprecated a little earlier, but at least it's happening now, finally. But good thing, there's a lot of open source packages that are finally getting off of mcrypt and moving on to something like Sodium or something more reliable. So, and actually, I think there's a conversation about adding libsodium to PHP internals. Scott Askrazinski. I don't know how to say the last name very well, but
I think it's Archizuski. I'm not sure who I do.
Yeah.
But yeah, Scott is he was hoping to do it for 7.1. He got busy. So hopefully we'll see libsodium come in 7.2, and that would be very timely.
Is that the fellow that made the PHP SEC subreddit, just for the security stuff?
Yes, that is him. And also we should see Argon 2 hashing in password extension in 7.2 as well.
Sweet. So will that be replacing bcrypt?
No. So the policy behind that is that it has to have one minor release before it becomes the default. So it'll be 7.2 will be the first release. 7.3 it can be made default if no vulnerabilities come up and stuff like that. So so 7.3 will be the earliest. So
this will be something we're adding to the password hash function, right?
Yeah. So it'll be a new constant you can pass in explicitly if you don't want to if you don't use password default, which I guess is kind of a little unfortunate because if you code in to use it, so we're testing it. You will have to go back later to go back to password default, so you get auto updates in the future if we add more hashes. But it's exposing it. It's good. It should hopefully be better than bcrypt.
Is it
not that bcrypt has a problem? It is slightly longer, I believe, the output, but that's not part of its security necessarily.
Sorry to cut you off. You were about to say that bcrypt has a problem.
Wrong episode.
No. I wanted to make sure that I wanted to make it clear bcrypt has no problem right now. We're not replacing bcrypt because it is bad. It's just Argon is better.
Gotcha. Always good to be forward-facing on that kind of stuff when it comes to security, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I don't know what Jeremy's writing on the board back there, but it started off with something. He scribbled it out. Now he's starting on something else.
I was counting the WordPress Laravel and well actuallys on this episode. We've since switched to bcrypt, Argon, and bhat. So.
Good call. Well, you're about to hear Laravel a couple more times because I've been upgrading the website. It's funny. Matt Stauffer has a blog, and I don't have the link, but maybe we can add it to the show notes. But there's an episode of his blog, which happens to be called a blog post, and he lays out how to upgrade from Laravel 4x to 5.0. And it's actually really helpful to upgrade to 5.0, but also it's really helpful for upgrading to 5.3. Believe it or not, I've been going through. There's some things that have changed too, but it's very helpful for upgrading old Laravel frameworks up to the latest version. So that's what I've been working on. But if you're for the people who are curious about how the website helps me, it could totally be a static website on the front end, kind of what most people see, sort of like, like a blog post. It's pretty static on the front end, but in the back end, it's actually very helpful for me to organize these podcasts. And specifically, it helps. I manage all the episodes, the guests, and the developer shoutouts through it. And it basically auto-generates the copy that I need. So I'll write in the copy for a general copy, and it'll format it in all these different ways I need to copy-paste it. Because I'm a PHP programmer, I like to copy-paste. What can I say? So it formats it for the upcoming podcast email list, so I can kind of just copy and paste all that format into a newsletter, then send it out. It also formats it for the metadata for YouTube videos and the audio files that go out. And generates a formatted list so that I can copy and paste the message to all the guests, so I don't have to sit there and type in each name every time. And it throws up warnings like if I don't link to the next YouTube video for the next episode, so it doesn't end up with a blank screen, which has happened there a couple times. Or it yells at me if I haven't uploaded the audio file after a certain time period after the episode has ended, or if I haven't sent out the developer shout out, which it takes me like a month or two to get those out because I have to do it manually, and it takes a while to get those out. But it's definitely worth it. But it's really cool because I've added Twitter. Unfortunately, doesn't have a really good way of pulling up Twitter profile, and after a while, the profile picture will get updated or something, and then the cache of that old one will just get deleted over a period of time. So I had to go back there every time somebody updated their Twitter profile picture. I had to go in there and manually update it. But now I've got this nice little cron that runs at midnight every night or 3 a.m. every night, and it goes through and it checks for it asks for a head. It sends a head request. So if you're not familiar with head requests, basically it's an HTTP request that just says, don't give me the content, just give me the metadata, essentially. What's that?
Just to see if it changed.
Yeah, totally. See if it's changed. See if it's returning a 404, for example. And if it returns a 404, it says go and hit the API again and pull the latest photo, and then it updates the photo automatically, so I don't have to do that anymore. So the website has actually been a pretty helpful tool for me to manage these podcasts. So if you're wanting to start a podcast, and you should, hit me up. I will give you access to the code base. It's really ugly. I threw it together really fast. When talking about Agile, you throw stuff together fast, but then you have technical debt that you have to deal with later on. So I've already spent hours on trying to undo some of that technical debt. Oh well, that's the nature of it, I guess. But the next thing is trying to figure out the scheduling. I'm using doodle.com, which is good for trying to schedule, but it doesn't really handle multiple time zones very well, and it's not very clear about which time zones are what, and that's kind of thrown a wrench into some planning sometimes. But my goal is to add some cool scheduling stuff into it, and yeah, that's the rundown of the PHP Roundtable website.
I'm just saying, WordPress has no technical debt, so.
No, but it's backwards compatible since 2001 or somewhere like that, right?
Backwards compatible to 5.2, so yeah.
Nice.
Wow.
That's beast. Cal, do you have any advice on running podcasts with and using tools to help you manage them and stuff like that?
Well, I mean, I've been sitting here making fun of WordPress, but Voices of the Elephant and the one before that, which is no longer in production, I ran on WordPress, and it's got I use Blueberry's PowerPress plugin, and that handles everything for me. The hard part for me is always getting it into iTunes the first time. And once it's in iTunes, Blueberry handles everything. And I wrote Adam Culp and I, because Adam has a podcast, but I think he uses Sculpin. But he and I decided one time we were going to write our own log analyzers, and so he wrote one for Sculpin, and I wrote one for WordPress that really, if you don't have anything else, having something like that is really fun. And there are several plugins and other ways to do it, but since I use Amazon S3 to store all of them, it's just a matter of turning on the logs and then analyzing them and putting up the download counts. And that, to me, pointed out some things I did not load. Like I've got my top 25 episodes as of early last year. I think March of last year is when I started actually counting downloads, and it's been fun to watch some of them float up. And I actually caught one person cheating because a week after I released their podcast, they had shot to the number 3 slot and were working on the number 2 slot. And I'm like, nobody is this frickin' popular, you know?
Is this the PHP Pixie podcast?
I can't remember who it was these days, but it was.
Wow.
I mean, they just shot right up to the top. Oh wait, no, I get that. No, that's not.
No.
But and so I went back and actually looked at, because I store it all in a database. And so I went back and looked at the log files, and sure enough, somebody had written a script that was, wgetting the podcast every minute, and it was the same IP address, same user string. It wasn't a real serious effort at cheating, and so I had to actually delete like 800 or 900 records out of the database to level things back out. But that's
were they just head requests?
No, they were not just. They were full blown because they were eating up my bandwidth.
That bandwidth, okay.
Yeah, but if you, the one thing I would suggest, if I were starting it today, I would make sure I had some kind of log analysis that tells me, what the most popular ones are, and I can see graphs and stuff like that. What was that thing Google used to have?
Google Analytics?
No, Google bought it, and it was a feed analyzer, Feedburner.
Yeah.
Feedburner used to be a really cool tool for doing this, but Google hasn't done anything with it since they bought it, so I had to kind of look elsewhere. But that used to be the really easy way to do things.
So how else do you solicit feedback on your, other than like download counts, but like in terms, or maybe like also in Sammy's case, for polling like which topic should be considered or how things are received? How else do you get feedback from your audience?
I don't. I look at when I'm doing podcasts. It's we stopped doing them over computers a long time ago. We only do them live, and so I look at a conference I'm going to and look at the speakers and pick out people that either I haven't interviewed recently, or the ones I really like to get are the ones that I've never interviewed, and talk to them. And it's who I want to talk to, which sounds very self-centered, but if you know me, it doesn't surprise you. So.
Well, that's awesome. I think it goes back to what Chris was saying earlier. You kind of got to talk about what you're interested in and what you're passionate about, and that's going to make for good content as opposed to just kind of pooping out something that you think that people would like, I guess, right? I don't know if that rings true with anybody, but.
No, I mean, for Roundtable, are you genuinely interested in all these topics?
Yeah, absolutely.
Enough to make show notes.
Absolutely, yeah. And anything that I want to learn about, and that's actually been one of my problems, is that I don't have good analytic stuff either. I've turned logging on for S3, which is where all the audio files are stored, and I don't know if you know about S3 logging, but they generate like 100 files every day. So having to aggregate all those log files into something that's actually something I can see and just see data points is my next big task that I actually started working on yesterday.
Fly system is your friend. Thank you, Frank. That made it so easy to work with, and of course, since it can handle multiple systems, writing the unit tests against my local system, it was that much more easy. So thank you, Frank, and happy birthday.
Frank,
was it his birthday?
No, every time I
happy
see
birthday,
him,
Frank.
Every time I look at Twitter, it's, happy birthday, Frank. So apparently that's a meme going around these days.
I'll take care of it right now.
Yeah, I mean, that's the cool thing about kind of what you guys were asking about, or what you were asking about, Jeremy, is that it is. These are topics that I actually genuinely care about, and I've learned so much because some of these topics I genuinely really don't know a lot about. Like I try to ask when I'm on. Like I try to ask questions that I kind of already know the answer to, but like it gets much more in depth. You know, like we're talking with experts here about this topic, and I've been able to take my knowledge that I've learned from these episodes and actually apply them to real world projects. And I really hope that people listening can do the same thing. Because I'll even re-listen to some of these episodes that go pretty deep when somebody goes on for a long time about really deep things. I know lots of them with like with Ross Tuck and IRC Maxwell and you know all of those and you guys too. Like I remember was listening to the licensing one in the car with my dance partner, and when you were explaining stuff, Chris, I think we brought up Phil's license that and Heather loved my dance partner. She loves Phil. Like she met him when we were doing our WestCon episode. And she's like, I really like Phil. He's such a cool guy. And she's like always talking about Phil and Mikola and Chris and who else? Oh, Daniel.
Mr. Kuzno.
Kuzno, yes.
Chuck
all the
Reed.
people that were yeah, Chuck. So it was just a good time. Just a good time. This WorstCon, the first WorstCon ever, happened to have a podcast recording at it. Have you had any WorstCon podcast recordings since? Any WorstCons?
I don't think so.
Director of Communications Chuck Reeves might have to comment on that. I don't believe so.
We've had WorstCons and other podcasts at the same time, but usually not at
but not recording the actual WorstCons.
Ones, yeah.
Actually, well, we have switched to doing some Periscope recordings. I can say that.
Yeah, there is
nice.
those.
Yeah, you periscoped at Tech, I believe.
Yeah, we did Tech, and I think maybe PHP South Coast, perhaps.
I've almost given up on the live recording stuff. I mean, I know we're recording live now, but at conferences, I've always run. It's never run smoothly. I've come home and like, oh, the audio quality on this thing's amazing.
Nobody listens to them for the audio quality. They're here for the mess ups. So you know.
The benefit of the live recordings is usually also have an audience in the room, so it could be like whether it's the Booze Talk. I think your most recent one, Sammy, was at Lone Star with Sound of Symphony. And that was just a nightmare because you had two different podcast audio devices to set up. And
yes.
Magnus brought his giant Czech luggage with their whole deployment. So it was a lot of wires all over the place. But
yes, it was either that one or the PHP Arc one, or PHP Architect one in St. Louis, I think. Now.
Tech was the last one because we had to mess with the microphones to get them to sound properly.
Oh, yeah, on stage, yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, no one was paying attention because everybody was playing games. And then, I can't remember who, I think it was Gary was talking on the podcast, Gary Hocken, and he would say something profound, and there would be a section of the audience that would cheer. They'd be like, yeah! We look over, and they're cheering because they won something in the game. They weren't paying attention at all. It happened all the time.
That, I think the audience for that was just too large. So you had so much background sound coming around. It was just that one. The podcast was fine. Just the audio for that one was just a mess.
Absolutely, it was completely unintelligible.
Dev Howell's done a couple of live ones where they've gone off in a room and it's like people are there for the listening
podcast
and the recording. Yeah, it's not just an incidental thing. Mm-hmm. And it's a smaller space and not everybody's there and there's nothing else going on. And those seem to have worked pretty well.
Maybe that's the key, doing it in a dedicated room and not having all your audio equipment fail on you.
They're also good about only having a manageable amount of guests on. So.
Oh, that's true. I think last time, one episode, it was like Chris and maybe Jeremy, and then you guys were like, oh yeah, and we invited so-and-so too, and we're like, cool. And it's just like, when I'm like that too, like I get invited somewhere and I'll invite 10 more people and then I tell the person that invited me, like, yeah, these 10 other people are coming. They're like, okay.
I think it was Lone Star 2 years ago.
Yeah, this is why it's so difficult to go out to dinner at a conference.
Oh, I know.
Like, God forbid I want to go to a nice restaurant? No, I have to always go to like a crappy restaurant that can handle 20 people. You got to make sure. Yeah.
True that. Well, I come back to the whole like what I've learned from this, and I've learned tons. So if you're really thinking about doing a podcast, I want to say it again: just go out and do it. You got to just sit down and do it. Learn lots of cool things, meet lots of cool people, and I will help you along the way. So hit me up. I will definitely give you what I can. I'm definitely no expert, and I shouldn't say this. There's something in the planning. Never mind. I'm not going to say that there's a secret. You'll know later. So I don't want to talk anymore about PHP Roundtable. We're actually kind of needing to wrap it up a little bit. I wanted to dump this on you guys to see if there's anything in the PHP world that we need to be on the lookout for. I know 7.1 is on beta 3. Davey, is there anything coming down the pipe for PHP 7.1, like any specific dates on when we're going to get the first release candidate and all that kind of stuff?
So the first release candidate should be next week, Wednesday. Well, it'll be rolled Wednesday next week, and will be out the Thursday or Friday next week. So that should be RC1. The only thing that's really that I'm pushing back on right now is one of the first RCs to pass, which was the too few arguments resulting in a exception RC. And I didn't like that initially because it's a BC break, and I'm very against that for a point release. But it passed regardless. And so I'm trying to massage it into something a little bit better. So previously it was throwing a top-level error argument, which I think is not granular enough. And there's some it's not supposed to affect internals functions. But when I suggested that we have a argument count error exception, it was like, well, we should use that for internals functions as well, because currently it's a type error, which doesn't make much sense. And then I noticed that the array functions are not using the same mechanism anyway. So there's some inconsistency there that I'm also trying to fix now in 7.1 before we get any further. So
These are
there's a
both
thread.
subclasses of error?
Say again?
They're both subclasses of error?
They're actually it's a subclass of type error, actually. So the reason for that is that we want to keep it BC as much as we can. So in 7.0, internals functions in strict mode only would throw type errors, and now they'll throw argument count errors instead. Because it's a subclass that's BC compatible, that's not right. That's B compatible, right? And so that's my goal. So there's a post on the mailing list. If you don't like the fact that there's a BC break and you want to weigh in on this, like anybody, please do, because like I'm very concerned about breaking backwards compatibility, and it's mostly around variadics. I think is where we're going to start to see people building new code around this idea of this thing failing dynamically and throwing exceptions. So if you're using variadics, then weigh in on it. Like it's something people should be talking about.
The term BC gets really confusing because it can be the opposite in the same context. It could be backwards compatibility or backwards compatible or breaking change, and so they're like.
It's also a great comic in the funny pages.
I would say BC break, so that solves that problem.
So backwards compatible break versus backwards breaking change break.
Yeah.
Disambiguation. Yeah. That's a linguist's favorite word. Disambiguate.
So yeah, RC1 next week.
Okay.
Keep pushing back, okay? Because we need this to be timed properly. It needs to drop right about ZenCon, the final release. So just keep pushing back, but not too much, okay?
When is ZenCon?
The 18th of October.
18th to the 21st in Las Vegas, Nevada.
So
Of November?
If you've learned one thing from Laravel, it's to time your releases with the conference.
Absolutely, yeah.
Of November or October?
October.
Oh, it's not going to be done by then.
Well, then quit pushing back, okay? Let go.
Push it.
Yeah.
Just let it go. Let it go.
The projection date is mid-November. I think we scheduled way too many release candidates, but then I'm no expert. I'm a beginner C programmer, so I'm just happy that this patch is the first one I've done without like major breakage. So yeah, it should be mid-November.
Okay, cool.
Sweet. I apologize to the people who have been active on Twitter. There's been quite a bit of activity for this episode, but my phone is really delayed in giving me notifications. So Colin O'Dell, he was asking what I put in my coffee. Yeah. I did not. I just put some cream in my first coffee, and my second was actually a latte. The reason I got coffee today was because I woke up at 4 in the morning to have a dance practice, so we could be at the dance studio at 5. We're preparing for the U.S. Open in November. Woohoo! It's the biggest competition for swing dancing in the world in California. So we're really preparing for that with our brand new routine in the Rising Star division. So that's why I'm all jittery. So much caffeine. And Sketch also chimed in. He's like, "Why are people moving away from mcrypt to libsodium, etc.? And we talked about that. I think you probably posted that before. We talked about it a little bit more, and that's because mcrypt has been deprecated. Well, I shouldn't say it's been deprecated. It's been abandoned, I think, fully. It's a C library that's been fully abandoned for a long time, and it's really important not to have security libraries be abandoned because exploits and stuff like that, no bueno.
And it's not that PHP abandoned it, it's that the actual mcrypt project has been abandoned. So it's not us. We're moving off of it because the original maintainers are gone.
Yes, that's a good point. Yes, the mcrypt extension is just a wrapper for a C library, so it's none of the code actually would have existed in PHP itself. And Paul Stuffins on Twitter, not heard of libsodium, but could it offer a better pseudo-random number generator compared to mcrypt? I don't know if he's setting me up for this one, but PHP 7 happens to have its own C-Spring, a cryptographically secure pseudo-random number generator. It's random_bytes and random_int. Those give you cryptographically secure bytes, and they do not use mcrypt. In fact, the current mcrypt extension to generate random numbers uses the same source for random numbers that random_bytes does, and does not use the actual mcrypt library to generate them. It just uses dev/urandom as well. It actually uses a couple of number of different other sources. Actually, if you talk to Scott Askrskinski, I'm going to learn how to say his name properly one day. He knows the exact details of which ones they fall back to, but they are secure and cryptographically secure. Good for pseudo-randomness. That's for securityness. That's how I say it. Securityness. Well, I think we should wrap this up on that awesome note there. Let's. I want to give a shout out to Chris Shaw for contributing the show notes for 51. What happened to PHP 6? And Chris, you are the long-running show notes contributor. Thank you so much for all that hard work. And if you're listening and you want to contribute the show notes, if you're listening along, just write some markdown. Go to github.com/PHP Roundtable. You'll see a repo in there called show-notes. Send a PR. We'll get it on there. I'll give you a shout out. We already mentioned Pacific Northwest PHP. Join us. ZenCon, join us. Also, there's a developer shout-out, and we already mentioned earlier about Laracast and how they've been a long-running sponsor of the developer shout-out and giving $50 Amazon gift cards to developers for doing amazing things. So thank you, Laracast. Check it out, laracast.com. Great screencast, great resource for learning, whether you're a new developer, an old developer, all kinds of good stuff. The panel, who secretly checked behind the scenes, nominated a developer. Officially, Cal nominated this developer, and then it got a bunch of plus ones. So I believe that's an official
after
agreement.
a mandatory 2-week voting period.
Yes, after a mandatory 2-week voting period, the developer shout-out goes out to Amanda Folson. So Cal, why did everyone nominate Amanda?
Amanda is she's just come on the PHP community scene in the past, 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. But every time I turn around, it seems like she and GitLab are there helping somebody out, or they're doing something cool. So I just thought that she needed some recognition.
That's awesome. And I think, Amanda, I actually think I already have your mailing address, because when we met in whatever the conference we met at, I was trying to give you a PHP Roundtable sticker, and I was like, I don't have one, but if you give me your address, I'll send you one. So now I'm going to send you another one, plus a $50 Amazon gift card from Laracast. So thanks, Amanda. I will be reaching out to you just to make sure that I've still got your right address and everything. I wanted to see if we could maybe wrap this thing up with some shameless plugs, because it's about shameless plug time. Before I call on anybody, does anybody have a shameless plug that they already have ready to go to give the other people time to think? Because I forgot to mention that I have shameless plug time. All right, we got Cal. Cal, what'd you like to promote?
Shocked.
Who is surprised? I've got a new book coming out. It will officially release next month, called Spin a Good Yarn. You can find it at spin-a-good-yarn, because there weren't any worse URLs available. .com. It is on it's written for developers, and it's on public speaking, whether that's conferences or user groups. I don't tell you how to build slide decks, because if any of those of you who've seen my slide decks, my slide decks are horrible. But there's so much more to building a great presentation and giving a great presentation, and that's what I share with you. 10 years of experience wrapped up in one little book. So visit there, or go to my blog, blog.calevans.com. There's links where you can join the mailing list. I've got tons of content queued up just to share with you. So.
Nice. Davey, you raised your hand. You got something.
Yeah, so I've got kind of three things. So first of all, sort of to answer or respond to Cal, I just blogged about how I do my slides. I always get asked how I do my slides, and I do think it is somewhat important. So DaveyShafik.com for that, just as an FYI. More importantly, PHP Bulgaria is coming up. It is my favorite conference, or Bulgaria PHP, I'm sorry, in Sofia. If you're around, Eastern Europe or Europe in general, you should check it out. And then finally, I'm working on a new project. So it's a port of a Python library called Hyper or HyperH2, and so I'm porting it to PHP under the name Hyper, but spelled HYPHPER. And it's a native PHP implementation of HTTP2 with the goal of using it for exploration and research into HTTP2. So I'm going to start working with the async stuff that the FIG is doing, and looking at like what application architectures around multiplexing and H2 and stuff like that might look like. So if you're interested in porting some Python, any Python, it's pretty easy to read anyways. Please help me out.
Hey, for those of you in the U.S., there is still time to get your tickets and flights for Bulgaria PHP. Trust me, it's worth it.
Speaking of, I should probably book my flight for Bulgaria
Me too.
PHP.
Yeah.
I've had mine for hours, so.
I guess before we get to Chris, there are some upcoming worst cons. Pacific Northwest PHP, going back to Uli's Sausage House.
Sticker's still there.
Yeah, on the gum wall. I forget what that marketplace is, but the
Pike's Market.
Pike's Marketplace. And I believe talks are for PHP World. You guys are settling on a location currently.
Yes, I need to find out that they are large enough, but that is going to be at whatever that place is.
And the last True North PHP coming up in November. There will be another Worst Con there at Worst in downtown Toronto, which is was one of the. That's where we took the Last Supper photo. So that was a really great place.
Very nice. And real quick, I don't think we actually mentioned what Worst Con was.
It is typically a post PHP conference activity where we go out for sausages.
Literally the worst.
The puns go on forever.
Hey, you're making fig jokes. I can make worst con jokes.
and like our hamburger buns, the puns are quite stale.
I love hanging out with Jeremy because it is like a pun battle. Because like he comes up with the coolest puns ever, and I love puns so much. I call them dad jokes. So whenever I get someone who's really punny, I'm just like, let's see who can be punnier. So. I don't think I haven't been keeping track, but Jeremy,
shout out to the Dad Jokes subreddit, a great source of material there. Good
I gotta check that out. Yeah. All right, Chris, you gonna wrap us up with your shameless plug?
Sure. I've been working with Docker for a while, and I was hoping to get this completely done earlier this month, but it turns out I had to get a new job, so I did that first. If you head over to learningcontainers.com, it's a video course for a lot of the Docker stuff that I've talked about. If you sign up now, you will get a discount for when I fully launch it. If you are interested in getting in now, just email me directly, and I can maybe slide you in early. But learningcontainers.com, or the book Docker for Developers, which you can also get from there. If you're interested in Docker, check those two things out. The videos I am hoping to get completely done this month. They would have been done earlier, but like I said, I had to get a job. So,
congratulations on getting a job.
Yes, it's nice being employed and having a job.
Been difficulty for some folks in the community recently. A lot of new hire stuff going around.
Mm-hmm.
That. Well, thanks for joining us for this episode. There's a couple episodes I wanted to quickly mention. The next one, there's 2 in September. Why I'm afraid to admit I use PHP is one. The other one is hourly versus value-based pricing, which we mentioned earlier. And then there's a couple of other ones that are kind of like pending. One of them that what should be interesting is logging and crash reporting in PHP. We haven't really talked about that on the PHP Roundtable yet. And if you have a topic idea that you haven't heard of or you want to revisit, go to phproundtable.com, fill out the little form that says I got an idea or I want to be on the roundtable. I'd love to have you on here. And I think, Hal, you actually have a story to end us on.
Yes, kitties, Uncle Cal has a story. Gather round. You wrote me, and after you asked me to be on the show, and of course I said yes, and it was just a huge bad mistake on your part. But you wrote me and said, "Do you have any advice?" Which was mistake number 2, because if you ask me, I always have advice. So I gave you some advice. I don't remember what all I'd done, but right about that time, I had just switched mics forever. I had been using a Zune H2, the workhorse mic, but I had recently sold a sponsorship to Voices of the Elephant, and so I upgraded to a Zune H5, and I thought I was all of that and a side of fries. And so I was talking to him, I said, I, as the experienced person here and the wise old man, I'm going to do Sammy a favor. And I said, Sammy, I've got this H2, and I've been using it. It's still in good condition. If it'll help you get started, I'd love to give you this. And you pulled out your H6. You said, it's okay, Cal, I got it. So happy second birthday to PHP Roundtable.
Thank you very much.
And Frank DeJohn.
If you're listening in your car and you've only ever listened to the audio-only version, go to the PHP Roundtable website and go to the video version of this and fast forward to this very ending when Kyle says, I got a story, and just watch everybody in the room's reaction. I feel like it's worth it to just watch the ending on YouTube. It's great. Gather around the campfire. Awesome. Well, thank you. What's that?
I said eyes are rolling. So.
No, it was good. It was a good reaction. Thank you, Cal and Chris and Davey and Jeremy for joining us in this episode. We'll see you folks in the next episode.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you for having me back.
Absolutely.